There's a virus spreading across the United States right now that most people over 60 have never been warned about. It doesn't spread through coughing. It doesn't spread through handshakes. And there is no vaccine, no antiviral treatment, and no specific cure. It's called Hantavirus, and according to the CDC, it kills approximately 38% of the people it infects. That's not a typo. More than 1 in 3 people who develop the serious form of this disease do not survive it. And older adults, particularly those with underlying health conditions, are among the most vulnerable. Today I'm walking you through exactly what hantavirus is, how people over 60 are exposed to it, what the early symptoms look like, because they are routinely mistaken for something far less serious, and what you need to do to protect yourself and the people you live with. Stay with me to the end, because the prevention information in this video is specific, practical, and not something most people know. Welcome back. On this channel, we focus entirely on health after 60, because the health threats that matter most at this stage of life are often the ones that get the least attention. Hantavirus is not new. It was first identified in the United States in 1993 during an outbreak in the Four Corners region, the area where Arizona, Colorado, New Mexico, and Utah meet. Young, previously healthy people were dying of sudden respiratory failure, and doctors couldn't explain why. The culprit turned out to be a previously unknown virus carried by the deer mouse, a rodent found throughout North America. Since that outbreak, the CDC has confirmed more than 850 cases of hantavirus pulmonary syndrome in the United States. The case fatality rate has remained consistently around 35 to 38%. What has not changed is the primary route of exposure, and it's one that puts older adults at particular risk, for reasons we'll get into shortly. Hantavirus is carried primarily by infected rodents. In North America, most commonly the deer mouse, the white-tailed mouse, the rice rat, and the cotton rat, depending on the region. The virus lives in the rodent's urine, droppings, and saliva. It does not make the rodent sick. The rodent carries it silently, sheds it into its environment, and moves on. Human infection happens when the virus becomes airborne. When dried rodent droppings or urine are disturbed by sweeping, by opening a storage space that hasn't been used in months, by moving boxes in a garage or basement, microscopic viral particles become suspended in the air. You breathe them in. That's all it takes. Why people over 60 face elevated risk? There are 3 specific reasons why this virus is more dangerous after 60, and none of them are widely discussed. The first is immune function. After 60, the immune system undergoes a process called immunosenescence, a gradual decline in the speed and efficiency of the immune response. When hantavirus enters the lungs and triggers the immune cascade that leads to pulmonary syndrome, an older immune system is less able to modulate that response effectively. The resulting inflammation can be more severe and progress more rapidly than in younger adults. The second is the higher prevalence of underlying conditions. Cardiovascular disease, diabetes, chronic kidney disease, and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, all of which are significantly more common after 60, have each been identified as factors that worsen outcomes in hantavirus infection. When the lungs begin to fill with fluid, which is the hallmark of hantavirus pulmonary syndrome, a cardiovascular system that is already under strain has far less reserve to compensate. The third is behavioral. Older adults are more likely to own property with outbuildings, storage areas, garages, attics, and basements that may go undisturbed for long periods. Seasonal tasks, opening a cabin after winter, cleaning out a shed, sorting through stored items, are exactly the situations in which hantavirus exposure occurs. These are not unusual activities. They are ordinary parts of life for millions of people over 60, and most of them have never been told what precautions to take. The symptoms and why they are so easy to miss. This is the part of hantavirus that makes it particularly dangerous. The early symptoms are nearly identical to the flu. The incubation period, the time between exposure and the appearance of symptoms, is typically 1 to 5 weeks. During that time, you feel completely fine. Then, suddenly, you develop fatigue, fever, and muscle aches, headache, chills. Some people experience nausea, vomiting, or diarrhea in the early stage. At this point, virtually everyone, patients and doctors alike, assumes influenza, a stomach bug, or a common viral illness. There is nothing in the early presentation of hantavirus that distinguishes it from dozens of other conditions. And the exposure event, opening that storage room, sweeping out the garage, happened weeks ago and has often been forgotten. Then, typically 4 to 10 days after the initial symptoms appear, the disease enters its second phase. This is when hantavirus pulmonary syndrome develops. The lungs begin to fill with fluid. Breathing becomes difficult. Oxygen levels drop. The progression from mild respiratory symptoms to life-threatening respiratory failure can happen within hours. This rapid deterioration is what makes early recognition so critical and so difficult. By the time the respiratory symptoms appear, the window for the most aggressive medical intervention is already narrow. If you have been in any environment where rodents may have been present, a storage space, a cabin, a garage, a barn, a basement, in the weeks before developing flu-like symptoms, that history needs to be communicated to your doctor immediately. It changes the clinical picture entirely. Most emergency physicians will not ask about rodent exposure unless you bring it up. Prevention. And this is where this video could genuinely save your life. There is no vaccine for hantavirus. There is no antiviral treatment that has been shown to be consistently effective. Prevention is the only reliable protection. And the good news is that prevention is straightforward once you know what to do. First, ventilate before you enter any space that has been closed and potentially harboring rodents. Open doors and windows and let the space air out for at least 30 minutes before going in. This reduces the concentration of any airborne viral particles before you are exposed to them. Second, never sweep or vacuum rodent droppings dry. This is the single most common way people expose themselves to hantavirus. Dry sweeping sends particles directly into the air. Instead, wet the area first with a disinfectant solution, a mixture of bleach and water. 1.5 cups of bleach per gallon of water is the CDC recommended formula, and allow it to soak for 5 minutes before wiping up with paper towels. Dispose of the paper towels in a sealed plastic bag. Third, wear respiratory protection. An N95 mask is the minimum standard for any cleaning activity in a space where rodent activity has been present. A standard surgical mask or cloth covering does not provide adequate filtration against particles this small. If you do not have an N95, do not clean the space without one. Postpone the task until you do. Fourth, seal entry points. Mice can enter a structure through an opening as small as a dime. Inspect the exterior of your home, particularly around pipes, utility lines, and the foundation, and seal any gaps with steel wool, hardware cloth, or caulk. Rodents cannot chew through steel wool. This single step eliminates the source of exposure more effectively than any cleaning protocol. Fifth, store food in sealed containers, eliminate outdoor food sources, and keep firewood away from the house. Rodents enter structures in search of food and warmth. Removing those incentives is the most sustainable long-term prevention. If you develop flu-like symptoms in the weeks following any activity that may have involved rodent exposure, and that includes any outdoor or storage cleaning activity, not just obvious encounters with rodents, tell your doctor about the exposure. Those words specifically, "I may have been exposed to rodent droppings," they matter. They change what tests are ordered and how quickly. Hantavirus is rare, but it is not rare enough to ignore, not at a 38% fatality rate. And the people who survive it, almost without exception, are the ones who sought care early and whose doctors knew what they were looking for. Have you ever had an experience with rodents in or around your home? Leave a comment below. I read every single one, and your situation might be exactly what someone else watching this needs to think about. If this video was useful, please share it. This is the kind of information that spreads slowly through official channels and quickly through people who care about each other. And if you're not subscribed yet, new videos every week focused entirely on health after 60. No ads, no products to sell. I'll see you in the next one.